anyway, I connected. I had I actually got, my mother-in-law was a novelist, and a book of hers was handled by an agent, and this agent, he was always wanting to read everything, so he asked to read my book, and he read it, and he suggested that I work with a development editor that he knew. And that was like the best thing that ever happened, because this man, this development editor, was just a huge gift. He suggested that the book was almost at an outline form as far as the story goes. And he wanted me to, he used to say, open your fist. And he had me develop this story in a way that it never had been. The rewriting that I've done of this story, really truly began in my work with him. And then a few years after that, and this was the biggest key of all, was that I hooked up with other writers, and I connected with people in the writing community online. And I started getting, I entered every Twitter pitch contest and everything that I could to get feedback. And I got a lot of feedback. And I got critique partners, and I got beta readers, and I got feedback from agents, because I was querying at that time. And everything that I learned through that process, eventually brought me to about a year ago. I would say, let's see, I can't even remember what year it is. I mean, I remember it's 2020.
How could you forget?
How could you
it's
forget?
The year that will not end.
Exactly. I know, the horror show. But let's see, at the beginning of 2019 is when I really started getting interest from agents. I got a lot of requests, and I had never gotten that before. So I knew I was at a place, I was at a good place with the book. And then again, yet I kept getting rejected, but the input that I was getting, really helped. And after I made a decision last year to query 100 agents, and if I didn't get an agent at that point, I decided I was going to go to a small press directly. And that's what I did. That's what happened. Last October, I started querying small presses, and I got a lot of requests again. And I got one yes, and that was all I needed. And somebody who said, Intense Publications, my publisher, who has just been wonderful, they said, we love this. And that was, and it was a yes. So that's really my journey to publication. I mean, in like 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, we might go back and pick through a little bit of that.
Sure, absolutely. Because there's a lot more to it, but that's kind of the treetop story.
Oh, it's a good story with a happy ending, because here you are, you've got your debut launch after 20 years. You stuck with it, you persevered. And now, because you're on the Middle Grade Ninja podcast, I can only assume that great fame and fortune await you. So this is just wonderful.
The fact that somebody who I don't know will read this book, that's what I really wanted. And as I kind of said, when I was a kid and I read all these books that I read, and the idea that I could make somebody feel the way I felt when I read my favorite books, which I continued to read over and over again until I started reading. That's another part of my journey, is that once I started reading contemporary middle grade literature, that was really helpful too, because I was reading books from my childhood, which, is in the early part of last century. Not really, but.
She said 2005, esteemed audience. That's what I heard.
So I've read a lot. That was very helpful to see what was selling, to see what people, and the good news was that I found a lot of books that gave me that same feeling that I had when I was a kid. So, that was really important. I mean, being an avid reader ever since I was a kid, I read voraciously. And I think because I never studied writing formally, I think being a good reader, being a reader like that was significantly important for me to learn how to even construct a sentence,
Sure, give me a voracious reader almost over an MFA student, and we'll be in good shape, although there tends to be a lot of overlap between MFA students and voracious readers. What books did you read in childhood, and then when you came back to contemporary middle grade, what were some standouts that may have influenced you in your writing?
My favorite book in the world is a book called The Diamond in the Window by a woman named Jane Langton. And again, we're talking deep into the last century that book was published. But the interesting thing about it is that when I read that book, no one else ever that I knew ever read it. I just found it in the library, and it had this gorgeous cover, library books, those smooth, not the plastic cover, but I don't know what they are, but I love library books with those kind of covers. And it was about two kids, and one of them was there was a sister and brother, and they were trying to save their house from the bank. And it's a fantasy story, just like Summer of Luck. And the girl in the book, she was always embarrassed that she had freckles, and I was always embarrassed that I had freckles. And I have freckles. And I was shocked that anybody else would be in a book, and have the same thing. And part of the story is that she learns to accept herself just like she is, with freckles and all. And that meant so much to me. And I never forgot that story. And I have read it over and over again. It's a wonderful book, again, from its time. So that was one of my favorites. And wait, I was going to make a point about that, but I forgot. So I'll just.
That sounds like a book about learning to accept yourself would be pivotal for the writer that is to eventually go on to pen Summer of Luck, which
right.
Site spoiler is point. Maybe about learning to accept yourself.
Yeah, I mean that was my point. I just sometimes lose track. But you asked me what my favorite books were. So that was the number one. And then I also loved Beverly Cleary. And there was one Beverly Cleary book in particular called Ellen Tebbits, which was also about a girl who had a dark secret that her mother made her wear long underwear. And she used to hide in the closet at her ballet school so no one else would see her. And then it turned out that this other girl's mother made her wear long underwear, and she hid in the closet too, and they become friends. And that, just this kind of sense of real kid feelings and real kid problems. Like I had to read books really to and movies and things like that. I mean, I had a good childhood essentially, but I never developed a sense of accepting myself really for many, many years until I was an adult. And reading those books made it possible, at least for me, to know that it was possible to love yourself just like you were, instead of always trying to be, maybe what my mom wanted me to be, or my dad, something like that. So, and then the other set of books that were my favorite as a kid were the All of a Kind family books, which were a series of books about a Jewish family growing up on the Lower East Side in the early part of the 1900s. And it was a really wonderful family story with just a lot of sentimental, happy endings. I love happy endings. So,
That is surprising to hear since Summer of Luck ends so devastatingly. No, I'm teasing.
Oh my God, really? Okay. So, today I have three favorites that I've read in the past couple years. The first one is called The Miraculous by Jess Redman, and it's about a little boy who has a tragedy in his family, and he just learns to believe in miracles again. I mean, happy endings are relative sometimes, I mean, it doesn't mean that everything turns out okay. It just means you figure out how to do life and be okay no matter what's going on. So that book just really touched me. I love books that make me cry. I also loved a book called A Patron Saint for Junior Bridesmaid, for A Patron Saint for Junior Bridesmaids by Shelley Togus. And that book is about a girl who is a Catholic, a very, practices her Catholic faith very strongly, and she's going to be a junior bridesmaid in her cousin's wedding. And she keeps praying for solutions for her life problems. And she ends up learning about tolerance and compassion for others. She had an incident with a bully that she kind of regrets during the story. And anyway, again, it's the kind of happy ending that, the bully didn't stop being a bully. The bully, she just kind of learns compassion for a kid that was having the problems that this other kid was having. So that was a great, I love that book too. And I'm blanking on a third one, but that's enough of me talking about all the books I love.
I assure you, esteemed audience can't get enough of great book recommendations. I'm sure they've all got books at the side of their bed table like I do that are just stacked up with a promise of one day. But by God, if you make a good case for a book, there's always room for one more on that stack.
Yeah, I'm reading a book right now called The Metropolitans. I haven't finished it yet, but I love it very much. I forgot who the author is, embarrassingly enough. And it's about 4 kids on the day that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. But it's a fantasy, and it's like a time-bending book, and it takes place at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And I love New York, so there's a lot of references to the city that are lots of fun to read, and it's very well written. So I'm really enjoying that.